Finlo Costan from Labelling Matters campaign. Just explain then, first of all, about the campaign. What's your aim? What's the objective?
Well, this campaign has been called 39 Days for Rosa, and 39 days, of course, is relevant for chicken meat because that's the average lifespan of a meat chicken. And for those 39 days, 3 young women volunteers, which includes one poultry farmer herself, a fine artist and a writer, and an animal science student, have been taking a chicken costume, wearing a chicken costume around 21 member states. That was as many as they could manage in 39 days, raising awareness about poultry meat labelling and asking for mandatory labelling so that everybody who buys chicken meat knows exactly the farm system that chicken meat has come from.
What's the problem then at the moment with the way chickens are labelled?
Well, at the moment there is no mandatory labelling, and so you have voluntary schemes. So, for example, the RSPCA's Freedom Food Scheme or organic. What we're looking for is mandatory labelling, which already exists on shell eggs, so people will be quite familiar with eggs from caged hens, barn eggs, free range and organic. We're looking for a very similar system for poultry meat so that people know if their poultry meat has come from a standard intensive system where there aren't really any opportunities for the animals to display natural behaviours. There's no natural light, no room to perch and this sort of thing, and a lot of overcrowding and a much greater instance of health problems such as from the fast-growing breeds that are used. So, for example, lameness and higher instances of heart disease. And so it's important that people can differentiate between stuff that's intensively produced and stuff that comes from higher welfare, because without the ability to differentiate, those higher welfare markets simply can't grow beyond what they've grown to already.
How much support have you had then in the UK and in other parts of Europe?
There's a huge amount of support from consumers in particular. I mean, that's the really important thing. It's consumers who buy chicken meat, and so they should be calling the shots in terms of the labelling they have. What we do know is that more than 3/4 of consumers around Europe want to see mandatory labelling that already exists on shell eggs extended to poultry meat, and that's really important. Consumers want this, and what we've found when Rosa, the chicken, has been going around Europe is that consumers in every single country have embraced that message. Nobody has been against the idea, and the chickens, the girls that have been going around, have been supported by animal welfare organisations and consumer organisations in every single country that they've been to around Europe.
To be clear then, how would the labels, if you were going into a supermarket and buying chicken and the system was put in place, what would the difference be? What would we see? What kind of labels would we have on chicken?
Well, at the moment, for example, if you go into the co-op and you buy a free-range chicken, you'll see quite clearly that it's a free-range chicken. It says free range on it. What we want to see is a similar label for standard intensive as well, so that it says that it's been intensively produced. Intensive indoor is the term that we think ought to be there, along with extensive indoor or barn reared, which is already a term that exists within the EU. If you want to use that term, you have to comply with EU standards, along with free range and organic. At the moment, we have higher welfare terms that are in existence, but they can only be used, they're used on a voluntary basis. We want those terms to be mandatory so that the 90% of chicken that isn't from a higher welfare system is also labelled, so that people have a prompt. People who care about animal welfare say, that's something that I wouldn't necessarily want to buy, wouldn't agree with, and so we're going to buy this instead, and they actively search out the other thing. And what's important is that we don't think that this change will create a revolution away from intensive farming overnight. We haven't seen that with shell eggs. What we've seen is a gradual progression, which means that farmers are able to develop their systems, create new systems as their old systems come to the end of their lifespan, so that they can gradually grow into that marketplace. We don't want to see a boom and bust. We want to see a gradual progression of more people being able to identify higher welfare food and to buy higher welfare food.
A final question then on the likelihood of this coming into force. You've done the lobbying, you've done the legwork around Europe. What happens now to convince MEPs to take this on board to make your new European law here?
Well, of course, the most important thing is that if MEPs are going to change the law, they need to listen to consumers. We've been working with consumers. Consumers have made it clear that they want the law to be changed. So the question is, can the law be changed, and when could that law be changed? Currently, the poultry meat labelling terms are being reviewed. They're currently being reviewed by the commission that's responsible for agriculture. There are in existence already voluntary terms for higher welfare poultry meat. We're saying those rules should become mandatory. It's a simple rule change. Consumers want it. What are you waiting for?